8 kings ruled for 241,000 years before a flood erased them. That's what a 4,000-year-old clay tablet claims. Tonight, we decode the Sumerian King List, the impossible reigns, the missing dynasties, and a final name that makes archaeologists go silent. In 1906, German archaeologist Hermann Hilprecht was sorting through fragments pulled from the ruins of Nippur in what is now southern Iraq. Among the broken clay was a small prism, no larger than a man's hand, covered in tight cuneiform wedges. When the inscription was finally translated, it didn't read like a myth. It read like a ledger, a list of kings, their cities, their reigns, and the numbers attached to those reigns were so impossible, so absurd, that for over a century scholars have argued about what this document actually is. It is called the Sumerian King List, and it begins with a single, chilling sentence. When kingship descended from heaven, kingship was in Eridu. Eridu, the oldest city the Sumerians remembered. According to the list, its first king was named Alulim, and he ruled for 28,800 years. His successor, Alalngar, ruled for 36,000. After them came 6 more antediluvian rulers, kings who reigned before the Great Flood. When you add their reigns together, the total is 241,200 years. 8 men, a quarter of a million years on the throne. Then the list says simply, the flood swept over. And this is where the mystery deepens, because the Sumerian King List is not a single document. It survives in at least 16 different copies, scattered across museums in Oxford, Berlin, Istanbul, and Philadelphia. The most complete version, the Weld-Blundell Prism, dates to around 1800 BCE, but it draws on traditions far older. Every copy agrees on the basic structure. Every copy lists the same impossible numbers for the kings before the flood, and every copy treats them not as legends but as historical fact. After the flood, the list resumes. Kingship was lowered again from heaven, it says, this time to the city of Kish. The reigns become shorter but still extraordinary. Etana, described as the shepherd who ascended to heaven, ruled for 1,560 years. Enmebaragesi, a king once dismissed as pure myth, was given a reign of 900. And then in 1959, archaeologists found a stone vase in the ruins of Kafaja inscribed with his name. Enmebaragesi was real. A king history had laughed at suddenly had a fingerprint in the dirt. This is what makes the king list so dangerous to dismiss. The further down you read, the more the numbers shrink, and the more the names start matching the archaeological record. By the time you reach the Akkadian kings, the reigns are normal, 20, 30, 50 years. Sargon of Akkad, listed at 56 years, is a documented historical figure. His grandson Naram-Sin is carved into victory stelae we can still touch. The list is not pure fantasy. It is something stranger. It is real history with an impossible prologue attached. So what do we do with the 241,000 years? Scholars have proposed 3 main theories, and none of them are clean. The first is the symbolic theory. The numbers, they argue, are not years at all, but sacred mathematical units, possibly tied to a sexagesimal system, the base 60 counting the Sumerians invented. Multiply, divide, or take square roots, and some scholars claim the reigns collapse into reasonable lifespans. But the math never quite works for every king. There's always a remainder. The second theory is the dynasty theory. Each king was not a man, but a lineage, a house, a ruling family whose collective reign was compressed into a single name. It's elegant, but it doesn't explain why the list itself insists these were individuals, often naming their fathers and the manner of their deaths. The third theory is the one most academics refuse to discuss in public, that the Sumerians were preserving an oral memory of something older than civilization itself, a memory of rulers or beings who existed before the flood the list describes. Because here is the unsettling detail. Nearly every culture in Mesopotamia and many beyond it records a great deluge. The Epic of Gilgamesh describes it. The Atrahasis epic describes it. The Hebrew Bible would later describe it. And the Sumerian King List, written more than 1,000 years before Genesis, treats that flood as the dividing line between 2 ages of the world. Then there are the lost dynasties. The list mentions cities that have never been conclusively located. Bad-tibira, the second antediluvian capital. Larak, the third. Some scholars place them in the marshlands of southern Iraq, Others suggest they lie buried under sediment from millennia of Tigris and Euphrates flooding. Satellite imagery in the last decade has revealed strange rectangular anomalies beneath the desert near the modern town of Tel al-Madain, anomalies that match the footprint of an ancient city. No excavation has been permitted, not yet. And then there is the final, most disturbing entry. Near the end of the antediluvian section, the list names a king called Ubaratutu of Shuruppak. His reign is given as 18,600 years. He is described as the last king before the flood, and his son, according to other Sumerian texts, was a man named Ziusudra, the Sumerian Noah, the one warned by the gods to build a great boat. Shuruppak is a real city. It has been excavated, and buried in its ruins, archaeologists found something they did not expect. A thick layer of river-deposited clay, sterile of human activity, sealing off the older settlement beneath. A flood layer, dated to around 2900 BCE. The Sumerians remembered a catastrophe. They remembered kings who came before it. And they wrote those kings into a list with numbers so vast they read like a code we have not yet broken. Was it propaganda designed to legitimize later kings by anchoring them to a divine ancient past? Almost certainly, in part. But propaganda usually invents heroes. It rarely invents bureaucratic ledgers full of obscure names in forgotten cities. Someone 4,000 years ago sat down with a reed stylus and a slab of wet clay and copied a record they believed was true. They believed kingship had descended from the sky. They believed 8 men had ruled for 250,000 years, and they believed a flood had ended that world. The tablets are still there. The numbers are still there. And every translation, every excavation, every satellite scan brings us a little closer to the question no one wants to ask out loud. What if the Sumerian King List is not the beginning of history, but the end of a history we have completely forgotten? If this story unsettled you the way it unsettled me, subscribe to Mysteries of History. Every week, we open another door the textbooks refuse to open. Hit the bell because the next mystery we're investigating involves a name on this list that may have been deliberately erased from every copy but one.